Okay, for step one, what we're going to need to do is evacuate the pressure out of the accumulator. So I have the OEM tool here that I borrowed from a friend. Thank you, Dennis. And so what we're going to do is put this on this guy right down here, this little valve, and twist it and just release the pressure. And then we can go ahead and start disconnecting some of the parts. Okay, looks like all the pressure in mine is already gone. My ABS hasn't been working for a while. There's just brake fluid coming out of the bottom. I have a pan underneath, but nothing came up. No, I think it's supposed to basically shoot up into this collector, all the pressure, but there's nothing there, so good to go. Okay, after you relieve the pressure on the accumulator, you're gonna have to really remove the spare tire and spare tire bracket if you have it. Obviously, I don't have it. I removed my air tank already. So those are pretty straightforward. And the next step is to remove the battery and the battery tie down, the relay, the water drain duct, which is this piece right here, and disconnect these 3 plugs right here. Slide the battery out. When you disconnect the battery, make sure you disconnect the negative first. So this water drain duct is bolted down here. I have my air tank module here, so it might look a little different from yours. Once again, I'm going to put this bolt back here. And this just pulls down off underneath this piece right here. Okay, now you're going to want to disconnect these 4 plugs. Okay, and you'll have to remove this wiring, this ground, from the bracket on the blower. I broke mine while doing the air tanks, but this just connects down to the positive of the battery. Oh, this is not ground, this is the power. That way, next you can take out the blower. What we're going to do next to disconnect the blower is there's 4 bolts, 2 up top, 2 on the bottom. But first we need to disconnect the connector going to the switch on your climate control. So it's easy as that. Put that back down. Okay, so after you take this piece off, these are just on pegs. So you just slide this, and there's another peg back there. Slide it off. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's good to note that the upper bolts are shorter, the lower bolts are longer. Okay, and the blower assembly might be kind of stuck on here, so give it a bit of force, not too much, but there's this foam here that's kind of wanting to keep it in here. So, and then you can kind of rotate it out since there's that peg in the back. Rotate it out like that. Okay. So here's a look at the blower unit. A lot of people replace this if you have a suitable replacement, so you get a better seal. And here's a look at the bolt placements. Those 2, of course, you can see easily. These 2 at the bottom you cannot see on video, but it's very easy to feel. I did this without even looking, just so you can feel what's in between the brackets. But yeah, you can give this a good clean while it's out too. Good cleaning. It's very dusty. Okay, so the next steps are going to be to remove the 2 hard lines going into the master cylinder, and then the 2 hard lines going to the bottom of the distribution block, or junction block I should say. And so a lot of people like to use a turkey baster for this, but turkey baster has a large inlet, and so I find that it doesn't really hold the fluid very well. I like to use these cheap fluid pumps that you can buy. They're meant to screw on to like an oil bottle, quart size oil bottle. You can get these for like 10 or 12 bucks on Amazon. And basically I just stick it in there and pump it out into a container, either this thing or this thing. So it ends up working really well. So we're gonna go ahead and do that right now. So very important when doing this job and any job with brake fluid is protect all your paint surfaces, because brake fluid is very corrosive. So I have towels everywhere. If you leave it on paint for any extended period of time, it's just gonna destroy it. So I have a bucket down here that I'm gonna dump this in. I'm taking this out so I can get deeper down inside the reservoir and get as much fluid out as possible. So I'm gonna pump it into this Aquafina bottle I have, and see now I can get this all the way deep down into here with this pump because it's pretty compact. So just as easy as this. And the master cylinder is divided, as you can see, so this pump is able to get clear on both sides, and I got, you know, like 90% of the fluid out. The rest of it's going to be down inside the master cylinder. Okay, to remove these two 10 millimeters, it's recommended to use a flare nut wrench, which means it's like almost enclosed. That way you can avoid stripping these, as opposed to just using a regular open-ended wrench. So I'm gonna go ahead and use it to break these loose. You can use open-ended to loosen them once it's broken loose. You see these are already kind of slightly rounded out from whoever was in here last, because they probably didn't use a flare nut wrench. So it's kind of hard to get on. Break it loose like that, and you should be able to do it by hand or use a regular wrench. Okay, that's loose. And for me, I'm gonna go ahead and replace my brake master cylinder. So I'm gonna go ahead and also release these back two nuts. So I can, once I get this off, I can just get this master cylinder out of the way. Okay, next we're going to release these two bottom hard lines, and after that we're going to release the two bolts holding the junction block in place so we can kind of shift it out of the way, I believe. From what I understand from the instructions, it's necessary to remove the junction block so we can get to, I believe, the ABS protective bracket, which is this, get it out of the way. Once you have it loose, you can use a regular open-ended wrench, or if you need, I have room because I removed the brake master cylinder, but if you don't, you know, a flexible flare nut wrench would probably work pretty good as well, so you can bend it like this, and if you don't have the room. This tool is working out pretty good. I just did this other one manually with the regular crescent wrench, and took a long time, so I highly recommend these ratcheting flexible flare nut wrenches. Okay, so as I mentioned a second ago, the instructions mentioned to remove the two bolts holding the junction block. So I'm assuming they mentioned it's these two, but I don't think I need to remove that in order to remove this. This bracket right here has two bolts on top of each other. And I think if I just remove this one bolt holding that plug in, I can have access to the two bolts from the side with just a wrench or a socket. So I'm going to try that right now. Okay, put this bracket out of the way. Okay, it's hard for you to see this, but I'll show you once the bracket's off. You can see where my wrench is. Okay, I got the two bolts off in the back. It's just two of these. And so there's two more going this way, except the two are oriented like this. So It's kind of tight fit, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that 10mm bolt and get this bracket. The bracket is holding on this hose and I believe these plugs, so kind of be able to move it out of the way. It's probably easier to access it from the bottom for this one. Okay, in order to access the bolts holding this bracket in on this side, there's a few things in the way. There's this orange plug, and it's attached to a bracket that's attached to that bracket. So there's a mount going downwards. So you need to go from beneath the car, press the plug for the top piece, release it, and then release the plug for the release for the bottom so you can remove it from the bracket. I've already done that, so I'll go ahead and show you from the bottom. And you're also going to want to most likely attack those bolts from the bottom as well. So here is a view from the bottom. So there's the plug that I released. Here's the other plug that you need to pull up on this part right here in order to release it from this bracket right here. And then these two are the 10mm bolts. So you are going to have to release a 10mm on the bracket on top holding this hose in, since this part of the bracket is kind of right in front of this bolt right here. So go ahead and go to the top, remove that 10mm bolt holding this bracket in, get this out of the way, and then attack these 10s from the bottom. You have to attack it from the bottom because this hose doesn't move too much out of the way. And then those plugs at the top are kind of in the way too, so best to just do it from the bottom. Okay, correction, looks like you have enough room to attack those two bolts from the top. Just pushed this out of the way like that. So get a ratcheting 10mm on there and you should be good to go. Okay, this is how the bracket looks. This is the Firewall side, this is the front of the car side, and those are the four bolts. So there's a look at how the bolts are oriented on the bracket. And you're going to want to save this and the bolts because you're going to be reusing this as this is basically a protector for your ABS unit to protect it from getting bumped by your spare tire. So if you want to reuse this, save the bolts. Okay, next we're going to remove these four right here and also these two down here. These two on the bottom are the ones that are connected to the master cylinder, and two of these, I believe the middle two, connected to the junction block, and then the other two go towards the other parts of the car. So just remove these four for first and then do these two next. Okay, I should mention there's fluid coming out now that these are loosened. I did evacuate this reservoir off camera, but there's still fluid down inside this module, so expect some fluid to come out. Okay, I'm gonna pry this plastic holder, hardline holder open, because now that I got all four released, two lines should be able to be removed completely. Okay, it's the two bottom ones. And fluid's coming out. I'm just going to dump it on my tray on the bottom of the car. Clean up a little bit. Even though it's all coming out, I just don't want to get fluid on my hands and touch something else, or fluid, you know, the less fluid everywhere the better. Okay, with the two lines going to the junction block out, remove these two bottom ones now. Okay, these last two lines that you are left with are the two going to the front fender wells. So you're gonna have to go in and loosen these lines with your flare nut wrench, and then you'll be able to remove them. All right, I'm in the driver's side fender well right now. I have aftermarket stop tech lines. I don't recall if you have to hold the bottom with OEM lines, but I have to hold the bottom with 17 mil. I'm gonna break the top with a flare nut wrench. Make it loose. Make sure it's nice and loose. You can do it with your hands. Go ahead and remove the clip. Have something to catch fluid on the bottom. Okay, so this is kind of hard because the area here is very cramped, so I just bent this line. So that's not really good news for putting the new one in, because the new one's going to be shaped exactly the same way, but we'll figure it out. All right, so I'm having a hard time getting this driver's side line out. It just has a lot of bends in it, and namely these two lines are getting in the way. So what I think I'm gonna have to do is install these. I took these out just to see if I could get more room, but it barely moves. So I think what I'm going to do is install these two bolts back, really loosen these two in order to get them to kind of flex more out of the way. It's only going to help very slightly because we are close to the firewall, which is keeping the amount of flex down. But you know, the air is already introduced into the system, so I'm not worried about that part. Just got to release those and hope that it creates more room to get this line out. Of course I can cut this out, but I'm trying to think ahead and how I'm going to get the new one in. So I kind of want to try to figure out how to get this out, even though I already bent this up. Kind of want to figure out how to try to get this out in one piece, so I can figure out how to get the new one in one piece. Okay, I released these two. I had to pull back on this quite a bit. These are pretty embedded all the way deep down in these slots. And then I was able to get the driver's side line out. So that's probably gonna be the only problem for now. I think the passenger side, I don't know, we'll see. Might be a little bit harder, a little bit easier. SOS does say you have to bend this line to get it out, because it runs all the way from the side, all the way against the firewall, out that side. So in order to release the passenger side bracket, you do have to pop the line out of that holder right there, and you do need to remove these two 10mm bolts holding it in, and then of course release the hard line from the soft line on the passenger side, just like you did on the driver's side. Oh, and there's a third 10mm bracket right there underneath the brake booster. Okay, here's a shot of the brake line, how much I had to bend it. I could probably bend the new one a little bit less, but it's gonna have to be bent somewhat like this, and don't worry, that's not a big deal at all. There's no sharp creases in this. SOS tells you you're gonna have to bend it too. The reason is because of these lines. It has to go behind these lines right here, and there's no other way to do it. So unless you disconnect the AC, which 99% of people are not going to do, so it needs to go behind that. And the part I'm worried most about is this part. I bent this the most. This has kind of like a U-shape hook because it hooks onto and goes down into the fender well. I had to bend that straight to get it through. So I'm thinking it probably will have to be bent also. I'm going to try to bend this as little as possible, but hopefully not this much to get the new one in. But this is how much I had to bend this piece to get it out. Just FYI. So in case you're wondering, you bend it back into shape. It'll be like this. And then this piece be like that somewhat. So when you're doing that kind of stuff, you just want to make sure that you're not bending it too many times and no sharp creases, because that's when you're going to end up breaking the brake line and buying a new one. Okay, the next step is to remove all the plugs. So we removed that one right there, and we need to remove these 4, and then the one at the end. My end piece was already removed, which is close to this one right here. because I was looping it since my ABS wasn't working. But these ones, just gonna go ahead and remove these. Yeah, for these, you're gonna want to remove them, unplug them. The plugs will go, half of the plugs will go with the modulator when you remove it. Half of the plugs will stay on the car coming from the chassis harness. For these, you're gonna want to press this button on the back to release them from the brackets. And then you're gonna use the button on this side to release them, the plugs from the other female plug from the male plug. Okay, press this button, pull up. Okay, with all the plugs removed, everything should be disconnected from the modulator. We just need to remove the three 14 millimeter bolts. SOS lists these at 12, but they're actually 14. So these right here, 1, 2, and 1 down the middle. Okay, once again, be very careful. There's fluid everywhere. Don't get any on your paint. Okay, so essentially now we're gonna have to start removing everything off of this bracket that says Nissan on it. We're gonna keep that, we're gonna reuse that. So everything above that bracket, everything below that bracket is attached to the bracket, we're gonna have to remove. Okay, this is Chris from the future here. Before you start removing any of this stuff, you are going to want to disconnect this brake line because it goes through this bracket and you're gonna have to disconnect it in order to separate these two pieces. Okay, so first step, I'm going to remove this bracket. So these three main bolts, I'm gonna remove that so I can get it out of the way and access these bolts on the bottom holding the top piece onto the bracket. With that out of the way, now you can see that you can access these three main bolts holding on the top modulator. So these bolts I just took off for 10 mil, and these are, I believe, going to be 12 millimeter. I'm pretty sure you're going to want to save these to attach your new modulator to this bracket. That released, you can remove and move that piece out of the way. This bracket again is what you're going to want to keep. So we're going to remove this bottom piece off here. Looks like 3 10 mils. Right, and there you go. And so you have this bracket. You're going to want to clean it up, make it look a little bit nice to go with your brand new ABS modulator. Okay, after you clean the bracket, I'm leaving mine out to dry. You need to transfer over these mounting brackets from the old line to the new line, and then you're gonna have install these lines. So mine came brand new. It came with these plastic on the end, so I'm gonna leave that on so I can fish it through. The SOS recommends you tape out the ends. I'm just gonna leave it like this in order to keep from debris from getting in. But I'm gonna switch over those brackets and then start, or actually I'm probably gonna feed the line in first and then switch over the brackets, just so those brackets don't get in the way. Okay, so here's a look at the new brake line about to go in. Once again, this hooks into the grommet in the back, but that you would be able to hook it in probably without bending this, except for the fact that you need to fish it through here. So because you need to fish it through here, you're not gonna be able to really maneuver this whole thing once it's behind those hoses. So I'm assuming I'm gonna have to bend this out a little bit. SOS's instructions say as much. They say that you're gonna have to bend some lines to get it to fit in there. So here's how it looks. The old line looks removed, looks just like how I had it removed. You have to bend it that much to get it out. And as you can see, they did the same thing. Look at the end of that brake line, they bent it straight. So I'm gonna try to bend this as little as possible. Obviously, you don't want to bend it straight back and then bend it down. You're gonna end up weakening the line and making it crack, or making you have a leak in your brake line. So I'm probably gonna bend it out maybe 30 degrees, start from there, and then see if I can fish it through. And then again, once you get to this part, you want to make it a gradual bend, not like one straight 90-degree bend in order to get out of here. Just bend it little until you can get it in. So I'm going to show you guys that right now. Okay, sorry guys, I forgot to hit record, but basically fed it through there and just let it naturally bend as much as it needed to. I didn't actually pre-bend this line. I only pre-bent that end a little bit. I think I showed you guys that. So right now there's some tension on this because it's not really bent. And then so now I'm just gonna start trying to feed this through, and hopefully it has enough bend on it. If not, I'm gonna just have to bend it as much as it needs to bend in order to get it through the grommet. So this part I probably won't be able to film, so I'll let you know exactly how much I needed to bend it. I'm gonna show you guys how much I had to bend it. So the end is right there. It's curved like that. So once I get it underneath, this harness is what gets in your way. I can grab it right here and then just feed it through. Okay, so basically you're gonna pull it through right here and then gonna kind of rebend it downwards. So you got to rebend it downwards so it lines up with this hole. Okay, so I'm cleaning off this area of all the debris. Getting ready to put the brake line back in. So I'm gonna fish that through there. Going to put my tab in there. Get a little hammer action. Get this fully seated. And then now I know where my target is for the brake line. So again, you're gonna wanna do it a little bit. Don't bend it too crazy. You don't wanna kink it. Okay. That looks about good. Make sure you can screw it in finger tight. Grab your 17 mil to hold the bottom, a floor nut wrench for the top, and then start tightening. Remember, do not over tighten these. You just want it nice and snug. Alright, right about there. Let me get the grommet back in. Okay, like that. I had to go inside to the brake line and inside and kind of bend it downwards too, so it make kind of a U shape right around the chassis. So now that your brake line looks like this, it's gonna be easy to bend back into shape. So you're just gonna want to connect this into that plastic clip that goes on the right side, and then put these 3 brackets on to bolt it down to the chassis. I'm gonna give it a little bit of a help, bend it back a little bit. Try to feel for the creases. Okay, snapped it in. All right, looks pretty good. Feed these through. Bend it down. Make sure they can line up. Slide this one over. And it should look something like this. So we're gonna go ahead and leave this one covered. and then work on the driver's side line. Okay, next for the driver's side, left side of the car, you're gonna want to grab the next second longest line. It's also gonna have a U shape for the fender well, and this is gonna be the part number. So in the SOS manual, the passenger side, right side hard line has a wrong part number written in the instructions. So I'll email them and see if they can fix that. But go ahead and open this up and try to start fishing this through, and we're gonna have to go ahead and do the same thing, which is open this up again, open the radius up so we can feed it through. So here's how the radius is from the factory, and this goes on this left side, the driver's side, and I'll show you how much I'm opening it up. Okay, so I had to bend this quite a bit, as you can see how open this is now, but I will show you the method for fishing it in. First of all, you're going to fish it in like this and kind of have it hook in that way. So as you can see here, for the blue, fishing it through, and you kind of want to tilt it up. Okay, so you're gonna feed it through like this until the tip of the hose gets through, and then you're gonna start rotating it because there's a curvature to the hose that needs to go around this hump in the chassis. You're gonna rotate it like this, and it does help to release these two lines that I released earlier. So I pull them up, and then it allows me to rotate this piece down. So now it's in there, and the line is here, and then now all I need to do is just bend it back down. Okay, once again, I'm going to bend this back into shape. So I'll try to do as little crease kinking as possible and kind of bend it in multiple places, right, to make a most gradual curve. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So you can see that it is bent again. And then once again, hold bottom down and then just snug it up. Okay, and we'll go ahead and install the grommet, and then we can move on to the cabin harness for the interior. Okay, now we're going to the interior of the car where we need to remove the glove box and everything in here. So there's a bunch of Phillips screws everywhere. Screws holding in the plastic panel below, and then screws holding in this glove compartment going up, 2 of those, and some down here in between once you remove the panels. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove those, and I'll show you how many there are afterwards. Okay, so this plastic panel, there's 2 bolts holding it in on this part right here, and then some plastic clips that you have to pull it out. It's possible I'm missing some. I don't know if I'm missing anything else, but my car's been again molested before. So if there's more stuff holding in, just feel around and try to feel what screws are holding stuff in, and then remove those. So now, once these are removed, you can see that there's screws holding in the glove box. So we're gonna go ahead and unscrew those, and then unscrew the inside, and then you should be able to remove the whole thing. Okay, I went ahead and removed the 2 10mm bolts per hinge. And I also removed this one. This is just holding in this piece right here, which you'll eventually need to remove anyway. So this one's next, then 2 going up, and you should be able to remove this cubby and then unplug the switch. Okay, with the bolts removed, undo this, and take out the plug for the light, and then plug to the trunk lock switch. Now we need to remove this tube right here. Okay, so this is what yours should look like. Mine's missing the cruise control module, so I removed that when I was doing my air cups. It wasn't necessary. So this is the ABS module, the orange plugs, and I believe this is what the SOS harness is going to plug into. So you're going to unplug these, and then quick note, mine's a 91, so there's no airbag. But if you have a 93 to 99 NSX, there's going to be an airbag here, and you're just going to want to make sure that, again, your battery should already be disconnected by now. But if it isn't, make sure it's disconnected for like at least 5-10 minutes and before you start unplugging the airbag, and then you can unplug it and unbolt it. Should be probably pretty simple, like 4 bolts or something like that. But I'm gonna go ahead and unplug these. Okay, so here's the SOS harness and the included hardware and everything and brackets. So we're gonna have to cut the grommet for the engine harness going through the firewall in order to accept these large plugs. So this is probably the only downside to SOS's kit, is that the, I believe, T3 Tech, I can't remember if it's T3 Tech or RFY, they make a plug where there's two, they make these have an intermediate plug in the middle, so you can only cut a small hole and fish the wires through instead of having to cut a large hole and try to fish these large plastic plugs through. So I'm going to go ahead, and they tell you to cut from the outside in for the main harness grommet, and so I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So the main harness grommet is right there, and we're just going to cut a slit diagonally and fish the harness through to the cabin and get these plugs to plug into the orange plugs for the ABS unit that we just unplugged on the under the dash. All right, so what I ended up doing is grabbing this with some pliers. As you can see, it's actually kind of hard to pull this out with your fingers because the grommet's actually pretty thick, so it's a decent amount that's on the other side of the firewall. If you can imagine, basically this whole thing is behind the firewall or on the inside of the cabin. Anyway, grabbed it with some pliers in order to get some leverage on it, and then cut it with a nice sharp razor blade. And then I kind of pulled out the bottom half of the grommet because you need to have enough room to fish through these plastic pieces. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that kind of one by one right now, and also tape these 3 wires together just so that they stay together and I don't have to fish through once. Okay, I fished it through. So I'm going to pull all of these carefully to the front. Get these 3 wires. And so the first step is to attach this relay to this. There's 2 holes right here. And attach it to the top one with a nut and bolt that SOS provides. The M12, M6x12 nut and bolt. Okay, so the M6x12 bolt, the 12 is how long the threads are. So it's the shortest bolt that they provide that's not a Honda bolt. And so we're going to use that to attach the relay. Okay, note I flipped over the relay. So after you attach the relay to the upper of these 2 holes right here using the provided SOS nut and bolt, you're going to attach the black ground ring right here to this existing bolt right here. Okay, now that ground ring is set right there. Okay, now the last 2 SOS says that these are for diagnostic checks, so you're going to have to zip tie these away, make them accessible in case you need to plug into these for diagnostic. Okay, almost done inside the cabin. Last thing we need to do is plug in the SOS white plugs to the factory orange plugs. They do say you can remove this. This is no longer needed. But SOS says you need to remove the entire bracket, I think. So I'm just going to leave it. I don't feel like doing that. So I'm going to go ahead and plug these in. And then you can just tuck everything away. And then we're going to go into back into the front bay and install the modulator. And so these plugs are plugged in. These plugs don't have the same amount of pins in them, so you cannot mix them up. Okay, once you plug the plugs in, you can push them back behind. This probably would have been easier to do before we mounted the relay. Anyhow, okay, that's it for the interior. I tucked the 2 diagnostic wires just behind the carpet, and all you need to do is reinstall everything in here, put the AC vent piping in, put all the glove box components in. I'm not going to show you that, just to reverse the operation you use to remove them. Okay, the next part is we're going to grab this 2-pin plug off of the accumulator and cut it back about 3 inches. So I'm going to cut it right here. And then you're going to want to strip these out. And SOS gives you these crimp terminals and some shrink tube. I'm going to solder them and shrink tube them, just so there's a little bit more of a secure connection. But you can go ahead and use these and just crimp them down and use the tube over it and you'll be fine. So SOS provides you the harness like this. What they ask you to do is just cut these off and use their crimp harnesses. So there's a couple ways you can do it. I'm gonna actually cut these off and solder, but you could use these and just use some terminals and put those on. It's really up to you. I want the most secure connection, so that's why I'm going to solder. Okay, and here's what goes to what. Red goes to white, green goes to black. Make sure you get those right, otherwise you might screw up your modulator. Okay, I got all this soldered up now. Red to white and green to black. I should note that these 4 plugs weren't originally meant to go to each other. They're meant to go to the old ABS unit, but you're using them anymore and they're not energized anymore, so you're just going to connect them to each other and then leave them on the bracket. Okay, sorry for the harsh light, it's getting late. I got ahead of myself in installing these factory bolts. So you should not use these because you are going to have to use the longer bolts provided by SOS along with the spacers, and this to secure the harness. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these 2. And then because there's a little lip on this bracket, that's why they provide you these spacers. So these spacers are going to go right there on top, and you're going to use this to secure the harness to each one of those brackets. Okay, so to install the brackets, they're going to go on in this position. Then you're going to put the bolt through, add the spacer like that. Second one. Again, bracket like this, spacer. Okay, now the wire harness is secured, and then we can move on. Okay, important note, it says 95 to 2005, but if you're doing ABS, you're probably not upgrading if you already have it, so maybe this should be 95 to 99. The ABS indicator lamp must be replaced with the Honda part number 39797 SE0003, available separately. So keep that in mind if you're a 95 to 99 owner. All right, we're over here on the workbench. So you're gonna grab your proportioning valve, your modulator, brackets. We're gonna assemble everything right now. So this right here is the 35 millimeter long bolt that SOS provides. These are the OEM parts. So this proportioning valve is going to center with this stud right here, and this bolt is going to thread in like that and torque it to 11 foot-pounds. I'm just gonna do a hand tight. And then you're gonna grab your 3 rubber bushings, which are these part numbers right here. And you open up your modulator. And you're gonna install these into the spots. Like that. So we have all three installed. So now we're gonna grab these studs. This is the part number, and here are the studs. There's two of them. It's gonna allow us to mount the modulator to the bracket. So you need to position your modulator like this and insert these studs on opposite sides. Okay, so set your bracket down like that. Grab your modulator and line these squares up to where they're parallel to all the lines on the modulator, like that, because we are going to slide it down into the bracket. And one thing to note is there's this stud sticking out in the middle, and that goes into the bottom rubber piece. So once you line everything up, and you'll see why we had to line up the squares, because it slides into the sides of the bracket. So line everything up. Make sure the stud goes into the rubber grommet on the bottom. Push it together and it should line up where the square of these pegs goes inside of this bracket. And then you're going to use the provided nuts from SOS to secure these. It says 8.7 foot-pounds. I'm just going to do it hand tight. Okay, now you want to go grab your aluminum Nissan bracket and grab the modulator, and you'll notice these three bolts are going to line up with these three right here. And so it's going to go like that. It can only go one way, and you're going to reuse the bolts that you removed originally. So these are 12 millimeter long, 12 millimeter head bolts. They are about 20 millimeters long in the thread. These are going to be torqued down to 11 foot-pounds. Okay, next step is to grab your proportioning valve in the bracket and flip over your Nissan bracket, and it's going to sit right about here. And the last three pieces of hardware that you should have from SOS provided hardware, will go and secure this bracket on. These will be torqued to 8.7 foot-pounds. Okay, so here is the completed assembly. This is going to sit on the frame rail, and this is going to be the firewall side, this is going to be the radiator side, this is going to be the spare tire side. And so the proportioning valve is going to be on the bottom. It's got two ports on either side. You've got your 2, 4, 6 ports on top, and of course it's going to mount through these three holes where it was originally mounted. So now we're going to throw this in the car and then run all the rest of the hard lines. I'm going to install Okay, these are torqued to 40 foot-pounds. Okay, so I'm going to insert this part of the video into an earlier section because I recommend routing this wire before you insert it into the cabin, because this side is pretty fat and this plug. So this is how I ended up routing it through here behind this hard line, and obviously my cruise control is not here so it doesn't get in the way, but it only can go one way because the harness has to come up the way it plugs in here. So the harness, there's no way to tuck the harness, you know, immediately downwards. It's going to be up here somewhere. So the only thing I would change is that I would get the harness like behind this block right here, and maybe underneath these two hard lines, which I could potentially do if I unbolted this. So, you know, it could be a job for the future, but I could unbolt these two and just pull this out and kind of route it behind this and up behind there. But it's okay, I'll leave it like that for now. And then you just plug this guy in to here and mount it to the spot that it was mounted in to begin with. Okay, next I'm going to start installing some lines that I removed that were not in the instructions. So these, again, SOS did not tell me to remove those. They did tell me to remove these two, but I'm going to install these hard lines back in, and then these two bolts before I forget. And then I'm going to go ahead and start doing all the hard lines into the modulator. Okay, next step is to install 46372 and 46373. Those are to the lower parts of the proportioning valve, opposite sides. So 46372 is going to be on the firewall side, and 46373 is going to be on the radiator side. So FYI, SOS shows you how these go, and these are written FL, RR, RL, and FR. So to remove those, you're just going to use a screwdriver, remove the plugs. So 46372 is going to go from the bottom of the proportioning valve to this guy right here, the front left. And so it's going to route just like this. So I'm going to loosely thread this in and position the bottom one in. Okay, and I'm going to tighten this in. Once again, I highly recommend these ratcheting clarinet wrench, flexible clarinet wrenches, because they work really well. Saves you a lot of time. Okay, now grab 46373, and it's going into the rear right, which is the RR, which is the other center. And this one's routed kind of funny. It goes all the way behind this, as you can see. And this is going into the bottom of the proportioning valve. And I should mention, if you're not used to doing brake lines, it's best to seat this piece in first, then thread this in. And if it's not threading in like this very easily, then it's not going in true. So if it's not going in straight, don't force it. You don't want to cross thread these, and you just need to grab the tube and kind of position it one way or the other way and try to get it to go in straight in order for the threads to hook up correctly. Okay. All right. Okay, the next two are 46378 and 46379, going to the other two ports on the proportioning valve, and here's how they go. Okay, so it's better to do 46379 first, because that one is on the bottom, so it'll be easier to reach. So this one is going to go like this, and this piece is going to go to the proportioning valve, the top part of the proportioning valve on the radiator side. I already started hand tightening into the bottom. Okay, SOS says to do the master cylinder, which are these two next, but I'm gonna do these because these two are annoying me. They're just sitting here. So I'm gonna do the front lines, which are these two, right now. Okay, I almost forgot to do 46378, which is the top of the junction block to the top portion of the proportioning valve on the firewall side. Okay, just as a recap, this line goes down, it's this line right here, goes below this one and into the top portion of the proportioning valve on the firewall side. The bottom part of the junction goes down. This is it right here, and it goes all the way to the other side, and the top portion of the proportioning valve on the radiator side. And then that should do it for those. These two are the front brake lines. So this is the long one, this is the shorter one, this is the left side, this is the right side of the car. And then these two go down to the bottom side of the proportioning valves. So this one on the left goes down and hits the bottom of the front of the proportioning valve, and this one on the right goes down all the way on the right side, goes a little bit back and hits, this is it right here, the bottom of the proportioning valve on the firewall side. It routes up like this, and it goes down, goes behind it and loops around like that. So I hope that gives you a clear view of how to route the lines. It's a little bit hard to figure that out on some other videos or pictures, so just want to do that for you guys. And then the last two are go to the brake master cylinder. Okay, so I installed the bracket, the plastic thing right here. Mine are kind of bent out of shape because I had to bend them to fit the lines in. Okay, the next one is 46396, so I'm beneath the car, and I'm pretty sure it goes right here. So there's a hole, mounting hole beneath the proportioning valve, and there's 3 lines right here. So it's a push-in bracket, and you're just going to push it into the hole, into the bracket, and then put your lines in these. Okay, I installed it. It's kind of hard because this middle line can't bend downwards as much, so I kind of attached it on the side and slid it down the middle while pulling down on this line as much as I could. Probably would have been easier to install that before I install the hard line, so keep that in mind. And then last but not least, provide you 46392, which is a single line bracket, which I'm not sure where it goes. I believe it could be the one back there, for the long passenger side hard line that holds it, but mine didn't break, so I'm not gonna, and it's hard to get to, so I'm not going to install this one. But I don't see anywhere else that it would go for a single, to hold a single line and push in anywhere, because there's no other empty holes for it to push into. So I think that does it for this. I just need to install the brake master cylinder now. Okay, so for the master cylinder, since I do have those 2 lines installed, keeping it from leaking, I am going to install these new hard lines first and kind of get them a little slightly loose so I can kind of bend them out of the way. Install the master cylinder, loosen the lines off of the master cylinder, and then quickly put in the new lines. Okay, so here it is. I have 46374 is the forward port on the master cylinder and the right side of the modulator, and 46375 is the rear on the master cylinder and the left port. And you can tell, make sure this is the right one, because this is the larger fitting, since the rear port on the master cylinder is the larger of the 2 sizes. It also looks different. As you can see, there's a longer area to put your wrench on. But I have them loose so they can kind of pivot out of the way. Hopefully this is enough room to where you can install a master cylinder and have enough room to remove the other hard lines. All right, quick note. Interestingly, this fell out. I see, I just tried to test fit the master cylinder and this fell out. This goes in here. And I was like, oh, I need to put it on the master cylinder. I'll just put it on the master cylinder instead of leaving it on the brake booster. And then I looked at it and I was like, hey, this looks almost like this one. And then I was looking at it and it says MP side, has some text on it. And then I was like, why is it so thick? And I pulled it apart and there's two. And they both look the same. And I said, hey, this thing has text on it too. What I think has happened is the master cylinder has been replaced 2 other times, and both times, well, one other time before this one, and on the first time it was replaced, they left this on, and then now when I took it off again, it stayed on the brake booster, and so I was about to have too many on there. So just keep that in mind in case you run into the same thing. All right guys, so I got my master cylinder installed and I just need to do, like I keep calling it, an Indiana Jones style thing where I just kind of do a quick swap. I broke these loose already, the ones on the master cylinder, and so I'm just gonna quickly take it out. I don't think it's gonna leak massively, but it'll probably leak a little bit, and I might have to release both at the same time because seeing as how these are intertwined, they might get in the way. Like once I release this one, install this one, it's going to be pushing up against this one here, and I'm going to need to get this one out before I can install this one. So I hope that makes sense. Anyway, I'm going to try it right now and then I'll let you guys see how it goes. Also, you'll want to have a bunch of paper towels handy and some rags. Again, just make sure you don't get any brake fluid on any of your painted surfaces. And then holding a paper towel actually helps get grip on the slippery stuff too. That's what I find, especially when you're trying to do things in a hurry. Okay. Just gonna give this a little quick tighten up. And I'm going to do this one. As you can see, fluid didn't come splurging out or anything like that. Okay, see, so this one is kind of in the way. So this didn't really work out as good as I had hoped. Lucky those hoses are flexible. Okay. Get these out of the way. There's no painted surfaces underneath the master cylinder, which is good, but I'm just putting a paper towel there just in case. Again, use paper towel to help you thread it in and so you don't keep slipping. I'm gonna just tighten this one in since it's leaking. Once again, these ratcheting flare nut wrenches, so clutch. Can you imagine doing that little by little with a regular wrench? One was a little bit of a struggle getting in, but in the end, it all worked out. Just hate dealing with all this fluid everywhere. Okay, now grab your flare nut wrench and give them all a snug. Alright, and then give these two a tighten since they were left loose. Then give all of these a final tighten. Okay, once that's done, just make sure it's all cleaned up, and the final step, or second to last step, is to install the bracket again. And so that just goes, it mounts to the cast aluminum bracket where you took it off from, using the same hardware, and then connect these connectors to your master cylinder. And then you're done. Science of Speed actually recommends you replace this fuse right here, the 40 amp fuse. Here's the part number. They're saying that when you have a damaged ABS system, typically this fuse fails, and it even can be bad if it even looks good. So I just bought it just in case. Mine doesn't look like it's blown, but again, it can look good and be bad. So it's just 2 Phillips screws, and I'm going to replace it. I recommend you do so as well. Okay, it's time to install the blower. And so when putting this in, we're going to want to remember how we took it out, which is that we had to angle it out. There's a peg in the blower that goes into this back rubber grommet, and we're going to have to angle it in this way first, and then swing it in to place. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So it's these 2 pegs that go into the grommets on the connected to all those hoses right there. So this one we're going to need to angle in and get through the grommet first. So it's hard to position the camera so you guys will be able to see this, and the camera will not be in my way, but we're going to try our best here. Okay, both grommets are in. Now I just gotta get these foam in place. With the blower in place and the rubber gasket sealing nicely, we're going to grab the shorter bolts and put them at the top, and then the longer bolts go on the bottom. Okay, and as I said, the longer bolts go on the bottom, so that's going to be hard to see, so I'm going to do that off camera. Okay, with all 4 bolts mounted, 2 top and 2 bottom, you want to make sure again that these are seated in to these studs nicely, both front and back. There's one back there that's hard to see. Then you want to clip this AC line in, and you also want to grab this line, or pop this clip out first. Grab the line, the wire, cable, attach it. Make sure the cable is going through the correct section to crimp it down, and clip it down just like that. Okay, next you'll want to make sure you connect all 3 of these connectors back. And then last step before connecting your battery and connecting this, bolting this fuse box back in place, is connecting this drain tube up. You just stick it on and bolt it onto the 1 bolt on the bottom. I can't do mine yet because I need to put my cup kit solenoid back in here. So I appreciate you guys watching. I will not be able to give you my impressions of the ABS kit in this video because my car is not drivable yet. But yeah, I'll give you guys an update on the performance of the ABS kit in a future video. All right guys, so my closing thoughts. Overall, the install went pretty smoothly. There are a couple issues which I'll go over in a second. But the biggest reason why I chose the SOS kit is because I know that they provide really good English instructions usually. So if you order something like from Mita, for example, you know, it might be cheaper, but they don't include English instructions. They'll have instructions, but they're usually in Japanese. So that usually doesn't help me out, you know, especially with an in-depth job like this. You know, something's more simple, you know, I can kind of deduce what needs to be done just from the pictures, but something as complicated as this, I wanted to make sure I had English instructions, as well as someone, you know I can contact SOS on weekdays and get their feedback, and they can answer any of my questions I had. I didn't have any for this job because it went pretty smoothly. The instructions were pretty good. There's a few minor flaws in the instructions, which I think I pointed out in the videos, but overall it went well. So let's go over some of the issues that I did have. So overall, this modulator was very easy to put in. This whole job can be done with one person. It's not super complicated, but it is a little labor intensive, and you got to be comfortable, of course, like bending lines and rebending them back. You know, there's enough room here where I did have to get under the car a little bit, but nothing crazy. Just to access some of these hard lines and some of the plugs, it was easier to go underneath the car. And of course, you got to have the car up because you have to have the wheels off and you have to be able to access the fender wells. But overall, again, this was it's easy, you know, screwing in brake lines and things like that. Easy doing the brake master if you end up doing yours. You know, it's easy removing the blower, it's easy disconnecting plugs and things like that, and taking out your glove box. Probably the parts that gave me the most trouble are kind of the stupid parts where it's just hard to access something or pain to do. So for me, fishing the wire through the grommet, with the SOS kit, obviously I had to cut the grommet for the main harness. If you have like a Mita kit where it's a 2-piece harness, you can use the smaller grommet that I had already occupied with my air cup kit. But you can use the smaller one. But for SOS users, you have to use the larger main grommet. And for me, I basically followed their instructions, cut a slit from the middle out to the very edge, and I had pulled out the rubber grommet from the Firewall, and it was just really hard to push it back in. It was hard for me to get leverage. Maybe for you know, the car is off the ground, and so I'm not a really tall person, so it was hard for me to just get leverage with like a few fingers and push it in. So I ended up kind of using screwdrivers and stuff to kind of help pry the rubber grommet back into place. So that kind of took a little bit. It took like half an hour, when ideally, you know, if it's easy, you can pop it in within a couple seconds. Some other things were the foam on the blower unit. The one that I purchased, you know, it's not the greatest. Obviously, if you have OEM stuff, that'll be better. I would recommend just reusing your OEM unless it's really deteriorating pretty badly. Mine should work out fine, but only time will tell. And then getting it in place was fine. I had a little bit of hiccup with getting there's 4 tabs on this blower. This bottom tab kept getting hung up on the grounding wire. So this grounding wire is bolted to that back part of the subframe, and it kind of gets in the way. The tab needs to go on the other side of the grounding wire, and meanwhile you have to make sure that on this right side these pegs on the blower are going through these rubber grommets, and that kind of hung me up for a little bit. But overall, this is a pretty straightforward install. And so I think it's a very doable DIY. You know, save yourself some money and set some time out, a couple days, 2 or 3 days, to get this done at your leisure. And it's a good experience. And of course, brake work, you should make sure that everything's tight. These should be torqued down to 14 foot-pounds, I believe. And you know, you just want to make sure that there's no leaks before you go driving. So when you're bleeding the system, which you obviously will have to do after this job, you're going to want to make sure to check every single one of these fittings that you touched and make sure that there are no leaks. So that'll do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it for you guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Drop them in the comments below. Thanks for watching.